In modern times, it's wonderful to have magnificent structures that still function as originally designed. Today's appreciation of buildings lies in the Rand Club, which is part of South African history, nestled in the heart of the biggest and wealthiest city in Southern Africa.
Today we're at the Rand Club, which is a beautiful club building in central Johannesburg. The club was founded in 1886 or 1887, a year after gold was discovered in Johannesburg, and the site was actually chosen by Cecil John Rhodes, who was walking down Commissioner Street with Dr. Hans Sauer, who was the first Surgeon General in Johannesburg. And when they got to the corner of Commissioner and Loveday, they decided this was the perfect spot for a club and that they should find out who owned the land. And the first club building that was built was actually a sort of rondavel with like a thatch roof and clay walls, and that lasted until 1890 when a more permanent structure was built, and then in 1904 the current club building was erected, and it was designed by quite a prominent firm at the turn of the century in Johannesburg, which was the firm of Leck and Emily, and they were responsible for quite a number of sort of stately colonial looking buildings. And if you look at the Rand Club building, it is typical of quite a colonial English-influenced building in turn of the century Johannesburg. In 2005, there was actually quite a bad fire in the club, which started in the central area of the club where we're standing now, which is at the central staircase. And it actually burnt all the way up, and there's a beautiful glass dome above us, and it burnt the dome. And there was a picture of Queen Elizabeth which hung on the main staircase, and that picture got burnt as well. And it's actually from a series of pictures, one of which hangs in the London Fishmongers Hall. So a copy of the Queen Elizabeth picture was made, and it now stands at the back of the club through there, which you can see. And if you look behind me, there was a new picture commissioned of Nelson Mandela, who's also a member of the Rand Club, and obviously that now hangs in pride of place on the central staircase at the Rand Club, which is something quite special. We're now in the main bar at the Rand Club, which is the Long Bar. And this bar, I stand corrected, but I think it's the longest bar in Africa and perhaps even the longest bar in the Southern Hemisphere. If you look at this room, it's just amazing, the attention to detail and the really amazing woodwork, and so there's just so much history in spaces like this. And in fact, when the club burnt down in 2005, there was a vote as to whether it would move out of the CBD and into Sandton Central, and the membership pretty much came back with a resounding answer that if the club were to move to Sandton, they would resign. So I think it really speaks for something of the history of Johannesburg and the amazing sort of permanence of these spaces, that people still use clubs like this today over 100 years after they were built. So if you look at the building, it's quite typical of colonial English architecture. It's very symmetrical, very ordered. But what you can see that's quite typical of South African or Joburg architecture at the turn of the last century is the red brick infill panels which happen in between the rendered elements of the building. And that is a very typical sort of South African turn of the century construction. As you look up the building and you see the gables, you can actually see the Rand Club insignias inscribed at the top of the building. So it is quite a stately old building.